Welcome to the fastest daf in town. Today on Masechtas Gittin daf Mem Daled. We're going to begin on the top of Mem Daled with Aleph Tanur bottom. So the Gemara continues talking about what we saw in yesterday's daf regarding the issue of selling your Eved to an Akum, or if you would bring him to Chutz La'aretz. The Mishnah tells us that Yatsa ben Chayrin, that he goes free. Now, what happens if Gavoy b'chayvo, that there is this Eved who is collected by an Ovid Kachavim because you have some obligation? O Shalochu Sikrikoin, or there's Sikrikoin, says Rashi, B'shashi Yisrael Mufkarin Lahariga, the time in which the Jewish people were in great danger, where they potentially could be killed. And you said to an Ovid Kachavim, Sakar Kazu, O Eved Zeh V'hanicheni. So take my field, take my Eved, and basically leave me alone. So Lo Yatzal Cheros. So this, because he's really being compelled, and it's an oinus, as Rashi says, we're not going to kanas him in this situation, and therefore he's not going to have his Eved go free. Now, we're telling me that if an Ovid Kachavim would take him because of an obligation, because it was a loan, that he's not going to go free in that situation. Or minhi, Frekta Gemara, Harish Anso Beis HaMelech Garnoi. Let's say you have a situation where you have one's granary, which is being taken forcibly by Beis Melech, as some type of taxes, if you will. So, Im B'chovo Chayev. If he actually owed taxes, so then in fact chayav l'aser, so he has to take off meiser. Says Rashi, chayav l'aser oleha dahavi kamoicher. It's comparable to like a sale. However, im ba'an parus patam l'aser. However, if it's an parus, so it's some type of loss on his part, so then he will not have to take off meiser. So we see actually in this situation that when it comes to a chayiv, it says koli chayiv la'aser. So there is a penalty over here. So shani hasam deka mishtar shile. So this is a different situation, says Rashi, that hari nehena mehem, he's getting benefit shepareh chayivai, because his obligation is being taken care of regarding these taxes. Hilkach le'inin iser chayav meiser, which is the reason why he has to take off meiser. Umiu gabi eved kanasim mishum machirihi. When it comes to the kanas of having your eved go, that's only when it's sold. However, zel lo machar medaito. This was not something which he did with his consent. Ela shlul ritzaynai gavoy v'yamay niknasei. So he's not going to get kanas in this situation because this was something which was beyond his control. Tashma, di omer Rav, hamoicher avdai lefarhang let oivik kachavim yotzol cheres. It says if you sell your eved to someone who's engaged in like blackmail, so in that situation, the din is that he will, your eved will go free. So, but that's considered to be an oinus. That's completely beyond one's control. So, l'chera, that should also shouldn't be going l'cheres. So, why should kanas? So, hasam havilu lefayis v'lopies, because he could have always given him something else. Says Rashi, b'davar acher v'lopies, and he didn't, and therefore muscle medaito. It's considered like he gave his eved within his own accord, his own das. It wasn't something that he was forcibly taken. If it was forcibly taken, then okay, then it's not a kanas. However, if he could have given him something else to him Matthias, then in that situation, the Eved will go free. Gufa. Getting back. Farhang of a person, again, is Ovid Kachavim, and he's a blackmailer. So the din is that if you sell your Eved, then Yotzal Cheres, then he's going to go free. My Havila Mevedai, what could he have done? So he said, Havila Fayas Lopies, because he could have given him something else, and he didn't. And the fact that he instead just had his Eved involved in the process, so therefore it's a Kanas. Boy Rabbi Yirmiyah. Machul shloishim yoyim mahu. What's the din? And we have a slew of questions over here. Number 5. Do we kanas the master that the Eved will go free in the following situations? So, for example, that you sold him for 30 days. So it wasn't, and then afterwards he'll come back to you. So is that really considered to be an issue of kanas? So tashma, if you sell him to this blackmailer, so he will again go free. Now in our Havamina, Rashi says we're thinking that this situation is also a temporary one, and nonetheless he goes free. Rashi says no, hasam bipar hang avichavim she'enu chazeres. Since we're dealing with avichavim, they never give him back, and therefore because of that, that's a different situation. Maybe why he goes free. However, if it would only be for shloshim yoyim, maybe not. Let's say that you sold him for everything except for his work, says Rashi. Gufa kanuya lacha, lovad shlo mishtabed bo shlo machoy, el hasil shivchasai levladais. So all you did, you sold him, but not for his work. So therefore, you're still kind of his body. However, he's not yours. Now that you can't really sell him, el hasil shivchasai levladais. The hashtaloy hifgam mitzvahs l'chal shabbosais. Inami machor malachtai chutz mishabbosas miyam tayvim. So in this situation, again, it wasn't a complete mechira. So maybe there's a difference in this situation. Chutz min mitzvos mahu. What if again you said that you're selling him except for mitzvos? In other words, he's still allowed to do mitzvos mahu. Chutz mishabbosas miyam tayvim mahu. That the Eved is sold, but on Shabbos and Yom Tov he doesn't work, and therefore maybe that's not enough to say that it's a kanas, because at least you allow him to do mitzvos to Shabbos. Mahu. Ger Taishav Yisrael Momer Mahu. If you have a Ger Taishav who is makabel, for example, as Rashi says, not to worship idols or to eat nevelos, and you end up taking this guy and selling him to a Yisrael Momer, who obviously is someone who is not particular in mitzvos, what's the din? Kuti mahu. However, selling him to a kuti. So pashut miyachada. Out of all these questions, we can at least answer one. Ger taishiv. When it comes to a ger taishiv, harihu kavik, he has the same status of you selling him to an avik, and therefore, because of that, the din is that he will go free. Kuti v'Yisrael mumar armila kavik v'armila ki Yisrael. When you're dealing with the case of a kuti or selling him to a Yisrael Mumer, so there we have machlokas. Okay, well, let's look at question 5. So what's the din of ganvu akom b'chayvay? If you sold him for a debt, so in that situation, lo yatzal cheres. That's what we saw. We said this beferish. He doesn't go free. In the situation for machar shloshim yoyim, that's an iboy delivshata. We didn't answer that. If you sold him Leger Taishav, Meicha Leger Taishav, you sold him to a Ger Taishav, then Yatzal Cheres, because there's the same name as an Akum. And when it comes to Machol Mumar, so that is a Machlokas. Okay. Right. So Bomi neighbor of Ami. So he asked the following question. Eved Shehipil Atzmo Legayasais. Let's say you have an Eved that put himself before bandits. So in this situation, and there's no way that the master is able to get his Eved back from these guys. He can't take him to a Jewish court to get his slave back. He can't even go to a non-Jewish court. As Damav. Could he get money for his Eved? So Amalei Reb Yirmiyah Reb Zreika Puk Ayin b'mechiltech. Go and engage in looking at the mechilta to be able to look into this. Nafak, so we went out. Dok, he investigated. Ashkach, he found the following: the Sanya Meicher Beisol Avikachavim Dama Vasurin. If you sold your house to Avikachavim in Eretz Yisrael, which is usher to do, so the din is that since you sold your house, maybe you could at least keep the money for the house that you sold. No, its value, its money is usher. And the Ovik HaChavim who basically forcibly took the Jew's house, and there's nothing the Jewish person could do, that they can't get the house back. He is allowed to take his money. Because of so you can actually write a shtar in their non-Jewish courts, even though, again, it's something which typically we wouldn't do, but this is a way of literally being matzah miyadam. You're saving anything because you're not going to get your house back. So what do we see from here? That when there's no way of getting your eved back, there's no recourse, so then the din is that we will enable you to be able to get your money back. So maybe just like the din is if they took your house, so too if they would take your eved. Now, but dilma hadamila bias. Maybe the only time we say that you could do this to take money is by a house. Thinking about bias, since it's not possible without a house, so lo asil zvune, person's not going to sell it. Says Rashi. However, when it comes to an eved, you don't need an eved. So therefore, because of that, says Rashi, maybe the din is that we're going to be geyser, even though when it comes to a house, there's no choice. So a person's not going to ever want to just sell their house because they need a place to live. But a person may sell their eved, and therefore, because of that, maybe the din is different, and maybe he will not be yitol as damav. Shalchahu Rav Ami, mini Ami bar Nasan Torah Yatzal Chol Yisrael. So the Torah went out to all of Klal Yisrael. Eved shehipol atzmo gayasais, regarding an eved that places himself in front of bandits. Then Rabbi Yachol Haitziyai, and the master, there's no recourse. It says, Beferish mutter litolas damav. He is able to somehow get money. And he should have written in the non-Jewish courts. So, in fact, we're saying that there is no nafkamina. It's not just by a house, but also if your eved was forcibly taken away, you can also get money. Let's say a person sold their eved to an Avik HaChavim. So, kaintin oiso, we will kenas him, says Rashi, liftais miyad Avik HaChavim. You need to redeem him from the Avik HaChavim. You must buy him back. Ad meya bedamav. Even if it's 100 times the value of this eved, you still have to do it. So the Gemara asks, Dafka or Lav Dafka? Is that really 100? Is that true? So let's say you would sell a behema gasa, a large animal, to an Avik HaChavim. So so again, there's a kanas on that. Ad asar b'dameha, up until 10. So the fact that it says this, maybe it's dafka. Marin says the dilma shani eved the whole yayma v'yayma mafklim emitzas. So actually, maybe it's not. We're not so clear if it's dafka or not, because maybe it's not. Oh, it's 100. No, it's 10. So it's really lav dafka. No, maybe it really is dafka. And the reason why we say it's more when it comes to an eved is because now he doesn't have the opportunity to do mitzvahs, which therefore is more of a reason why you have to buy him back. Now, when it comes to an Avik HaChavim who purchased your eved, it's up until 10 times the value of this person. But dafka or lav dafka, again, is it dafka or not? So Tashma, so here we just flip around. Here it says for an animal it's 100 times more. So maybe again it's lav dafka. It just means even so much more. Maybe an eved is different because he doesn't go back to you. Says Rashi, Kormer Dilma Turvayu Davka. The eved hainu taima, why only 10? Delu kansua kuli high. We don't give you a huge penalty. Delu hadulu mari, busted apart, because after you redeem him, you don't get the eved anymore. This is your kanas. You have to buy him back, and then he goes free. Datanan yatzal cheres. However, when it comes to the animal, you're going to be able to keep it. So Ella behema taimamai. Why 100? Mishum the 100 because he could get the animal back. So let can say tveichad. So let it be one more. Why does it have to be this amount? Let it be one more, like 101. El Evan milsado shchicha lo gazi b'rabbanan. When it comes to an Evan being sold to an Av Chachamim, this is considered to be something which is not commonplace, and therefore the Rabbanan are not geyser. Okay. Weiter. So, Bomini Rabbi Yomi and Rabbi Asi. Machar Avdo Umeis. Let's say you sold your Eved, and then the Israel dies. Mahu Shik Nesues Bono Yacharo. So we said that you have to be paida, you have to redeem him. The question is, what about if, let's say, the master who shouldn't have done so, he ended up dying. So his children, his heirs, have the same obligation and will penalize them. So Imtim Salaymer, maybe you can say like this, and this is more in Moed and elsewhere, that Saram Oizen Bechor Mace, Kansubino Achar Mishum Diasur Deraisahi. So says Rashi, a Kohen Hatsarim Oizen HaBechor. Let's say you have a Kohen who cuts the firstborn animal's ear, the Avar Mishum Ba Kol Mum Yeboy, which you're not allowed to do because the Torah says you're not allowed to deliberately make a mum on a Bechor. Umeboylan Sarmu Mace. What if, let's say, he did this and then that man dies? We're going to cast the children as well. Maybe we can't answer from there. Because in that situation, the father did an Issa Deraisa by making a mum on this animal. And therefore, because it was a mum that was made on this animal, so therefore maybe in that situation, we will say that we're going to cast the children. However, says Rashi, Moicher Abdul Avichavim is the Rabbanan Huda Avad. So here he only didn't Issa Rabbanan of selling the Evet. Still, he wasn't supposed to do so. But nonetheless, this is only an Issa Rabbanan. So maybe in this situation, we're going to make a distinction, and we're not going to kanas the children. So as we continue to Mem Dalad Amid Beis, the Gemara says as follows: V'im Tim Saloimar Kivan Malachtoi Kivin Malachto B'Moyed. So what happens, as Rashi, by Gabi Machavin Malachtai B'Moed, you waited right before Yom Tov to start, which you could have done before, so you can't finish it on the Moed. Says Rashi again, Gabi Machavin Malachta B'Moed. You deliberately were going to wait till Chol Moed to do a certain malacha. Shiach Olasus Kaid B'Moed. You could have done it before. Oh Hanicha Malahaskel Ba'ad La'achar Moed. You could have waited until after the holiday was over. Kivan did simtim lahaskel ba samach hamoyed. Since you began it next to the moyed, she'imli gemarena b'moyed yehi davar aved. It's normally when it comes to chol moyed, we make a leniency that you can do something which is a davar aved, something which is a monetary loss. Yehi mutul garmin should be able to complete it. If you started, you can complete it on chol moed because otherwise it will cause you a loss. And on hasam the kulan im chibdem malachta b'moyed yabdu. However, if your intention was Badaf could be able to complete it on the moyed, then that's not allowed. The Iboil, the Gemara asks over there, Kivan umeis mahu sheknus b'no acharov. What's the din if that person who deliberately waited until Chol Moed dies? Do we also say that their heirs, the children, also the issue is the same? Now, again, the children didn't do an Isser, so maybe we shouldn't penalize the children. So in this situation, the children do anything wrong. So hachamai. So here was the din. L'didei kansu rabbanan, do we say that we're going to kanas the children? V'halei say l'didei kansu rabbanan. We're going to kanas the man. However, but not the children. No dilma l'mamoyne kansrabanan va'isei. Where it's not the gavra, but the chetza. The reality is we're kanasing the money or the eved. So maybe the din is we're not going to look at the person. Okay, the father's not alive, but the money's still extant. It's still here. So since it's still here, maybe we should say we're going to still kanas the children. So actually we learned elsewhere, it says like this: if you have a sadeh sheniskavtza b'shvius, let's say you have a field in which the thorns were taken out of it on Shemitah, and says Rashi, v'enzu avodas karkim in the Torah, this is really not a Torah prohibition. Nonetheless, Rashi says, well, kansua, we don't kanas, v'tizu moiti shvius. As soon as Shemitah is over, you can immediately plant. We're not going to say that we're going to knas you and make you wait like kadesh yasu. It's okay. Tizrol mighty shvius. So in that situation, we'll allow you, because this is not a din deraisa, taking the thorns out. However, the Gemara says, nitaiva o nidaira lo tizrol mighty shvius. Let's say you fertilized, as Rashi nizdavdol b'hoylech lo zevel b'agolois, that you took a bunch of wagons, a bunch of animals, and you fertilized the entire field, which is a huge problem. You're not allowed to do that on Shemitah. Or, says Rashi, nidaira al yidei dir behem lazavel. Again, you had the fields like plowed through animals, again, for the purposes of fertilizing. This is considered to be a avodas karka. That's work on Shemitah, and therefore we will knas you regarding that. So, that's what it says. That was the chilaf. Yom Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Chanina naktinan. We have the tradition that hetiva umeis b'noi zarai. Let's say that's actually happened, a similar situation, but the man died, the one who did this iser. So now the children inherit the land. They're allowed to plant it no matter what. Alma, what do you see? So we see clearly this distinction between we knas the person, not the child. Okay, Amar Rabbi Naktinan, we also have a tradition. Time taharo shel chavero. Let's say a person made tameh that which his friends' things are, which therefore they become less valuable or can't be used at all. Umeis, and then that guy dies. Again, we're not going to knas the children. My time for a different reason. Hezek she'enu nikr l'shmei hezek. When it comes to a damage which is not recognizable, because something which is tameh and tahar is a spiritual thing, it's not, you don't see anything different in the food itself, but it's a hezek nonetheless, but it's a hezek which is not nikr. So kansura durabanan he l'didei kansura rabbanan l'brei loika kansura rabbanan. Again, we're not going to, the rabbanan will only knas the individual, but not the child. Let's look at TB13. TB13 asks, Machar Abdu Mace. So we ended up saying that we're not going to knas the children, and we saw this when it came to the field, in which even though you were involved in fertilizing it on Shemitah, but since the guy died, the din is that the children will not be, the knas will not go onto the children. Instead, we say that they could plant mamoitzi shvius. Back in the Gemara, so a person is not allowed to take his eved and sell him even to a Jew in chutz la'aretz. If he does, he will have to go free. So Tanaban, Hamaycher Abdul chutz la'aretz. Let's say again, you sold your eved to chutz la'aretz, that's l'cheres. The sarach get shichur merabu sheni, and we're actually going to demand a get shichur from this second guy. Now again, this Rashi says even if it's a Yisrael, it doesn't make any difference. To still the Isser applies. We don't allow him to be sold to chutz la'aretz. So Rabbi Gamliel Omer pamim yatsa pamim lo yatsa. Actually, it depends. There's sometimes he does go free, sometimes not. Ketzad. So Amar, if he said, quote, Ploni, or which is written, Ploni Abdi, Mechartihu LaPloni, I Ploni, am selling my Eved to this other guy, and he says, Antoichi lo yatsa. Now, he's not going to go free because Antoicha Rashi just says, Masha Shenoyla B'Antochia, that he was just born there. But he's not saying that he should actually live in the chutz la'aretz. So therefore, he's not going to go free because it wasn't clear that he actually was selling him to be able to live outside of chutz la'aretz. It says Rashi v'ikol ameimar lo lochu al manas lo haylichu sham. Not that he should go to this land outside of Israel. Hilkach lo yatzal cheres. He's not going to go free. Yafil haylichu yesh loimer daitel achsar. He could have said, "Listen, I didn't know. My intention was not for him to be sold and to live in this location. I was just saying that." This was his on his birth certificate, if you will. However, he's not going to go free. However, if instead of, let's say he said, or he wrote, Lantoichi shevantoichia yatsa. So there it's clear, since Rashi mashmish diraso sham, yalmanaskin lachu, that he was actually selling him in order that he was going to end up living there. Outside of chutz la'aretz, it was very clear what his intention was, the Adon who was selling him, and therefore he will have to essentially redeem him and have him go free. Abahatanya, we learn mechartihu antoichi yatsa. It says that he will go free. Antoichi hashruya b'lud yatsa. It's only if you specify and says, and now he lives in Lud. So lo kasha hadiis le beis be'eretz Yisrael hadiis le ushpiza be'eretz Yisrael. It depends where his living quarters are. Says Rashi, when he said this, that he will not go free until he was more specific. This guy actually had a house in Eretz Yisrael. So it was very clear, since he doesn't have a house in Eretz Yisrael, it was obvious he wasn't going to end up selling him to live in Eretz Yisrael. So therefore, because of that, he's going to end up going free. Boy Rabbi Yirmiyah ben Bavel shenasa isha be'eretz Yisrael. How about a person who's in Bavel, who marries a woman in Eretz Yisrael, and she brings in avadim and shvachais, and their das is to return to Bavel. Mahu, is this marriage like selling her slaves to Chutz La'aretz? So tiboil man di'amar hadini ma, tiboil man di'amar hadini moi. So we can say it's according to both opinions. Says Rashi, what is this? So Yavamo says, Hama chaneses shum balwa v'girsha. Let's say she brings something of value into her husband's situation. They got divorced. Hiomeres keilani noitelas. I'm taking that which is mine. V'hu oimer damim ani noisen. I'm taking the money. So Rashi says, that the din is with him, that he gets to keep the kli. That she takes it back. Because this kli was something which was has some sentimental value in her family, and therefore because of that, again, you could look at and ask the question either way. So back in the Gemara. So tiboil mandi amar hadini ma. Tiboil mandi amar hadini ma. Tiboil mandi amar hadini ma. That if the din was with her, that really, let's say these avadim really are connected to her more. Kivan da hadini ma, since it's connected to her, kidi da damu. Therefore, they're like hers. And because of that, Rashi says, "V'la machirahi." It's not like a sale. Ta'im nis armo and nis garsha didan inhu. They're still hers. Or you can say no, because the reality is that in the meanwhile, while they're married, he'll be able to benefit from them. That the din is that it's like his. It's like they're his. And therefore they would go free. Now, on the other hand, because he doesn't really have a complete kinyan of these avadim, maybe it's not the same. Teku. Rabbi Yochanan learned the following and taught me the following. Eved shatza acharab l'Surya. Let's see an Eved that goes after his master to Syria, which we saw in the beginning of this Masechta, Aram Savah, which it has certain aspects like Chutzor, certain aspects like Eretz Yisrael. As Rashi quotes, Hamoicher Abdul Surya, that if you would sell your Eved to Surya, it's Kamoicher Lichutzor, which means just like you sell your Eved to Chutzor, he goes free. So too, if you would sell him to Surya, he would go free as well. So it makes sense. The reason why it says here that Eved Shiotza Acha Rabbi Surya Umachar Sham, you sold him to Yisrael there, Rabbi Yotzal Cheres, then he will go free. Yavel b'shiyatza metchila ladas v'ihavi mochia eved loy havi rabbi matzi kayifle kedanan hakol malna Eretz Yisrael ve'en hakol moitzin b'shnei dayan and gezeres. So it says that you could force someone to go up to Eretz Yisrael, but you can't force someone to go to Chutz La'aretz. So the din is the Yosel Cheres. So what time Rav Chia ibed esachusai. But we learned that no, he remains an eved l'kasha kan shedas rabu lachs or kan shedas rabu lachs. So it all depends on whether or not the master has the intention to go back. Says Rashi, Kashiyotza, when he left Eretz Yisrael, Amanas Kain Yotza, Kivan de Machor Havi Kamaychem Eretz L'Chutzorets. So again, it's all totally in whether or not his intention is to return or not. V'osanya Yotze Eved Acha Rabu L'Surya Yotze, he goes, Lo Sagidu Napik, but non Vena Kol Moitzin. We said that not everyone's allowed to leave Eretz Yisrael. El Yotza, he left Yotza Eved Acharabo with Surya. In other words, what happened was not that the Eved was forcefully taken, but he went willingly. Umacharabo Sham, and the master sold him in Surya. So Im Das Rabu Lachsor. So if the master is planning on going back to Eretz Yisrael, so we're going to force him. then Rashi says, that he should go free. However, if the master does not have intention to go back, we don't force him, since it's a sale from Chutz La'aretz to Chutz La'aretz, where the Eved doesn't go free. So the whole issue is dafka from Eretz Yisrael to Chutz La'aretz. But in this situation, this was actually a case of like Chutz La'aretz to Chutz La'aretz. And therefore, the master is not going to be forced to have to free him. Question 6. Eved Shatza Acharabel Surya. Eved went after him willingly. So he was already in Chutz La'aretz. It's not that he was in Eretz Yisrael, but the Eved willingly left. And therefore, it's like a sale from Chutz La'aretz to Chutz La'aretz. Ha'im kaifnos al haitzo. Do we force the guy to have to free him? So, im yatsa al das lachsar kaifin. If the Eved who went willingly, his intention is to go back to Eretz Yisrael, then we will force the Rav to free him. In other words, the das is not about the master. The das is the Eved. If his intention was really to go back to Eretz Yisrael, so therefore we will free him. The im yatsa shalom anas lachsar in kaifin. Since he willingly left Eretz Yisrael, so if he's not planning on going back, we're not going to free him. That was question 6 as well as TA12. Let's see what it says. Eved Shatza Acharabel Surya Machar Rabbo Madinai. So it says like this: Im Rabbi Yotzai, if the Rabbi he left, Al Das Laser Kaifines Rabbo Hoitziyo Imin Daita Laser Yotza. Okay, so written a little bit differently over there. Okay, Im Das Rabbo Lachser. So if the das again, it says the das is really again it says clear it's the intention of the guy to go back. Okay, all right. Weiter. So the Gemara continues and says as follows: Fine. So yotze eved acharabel surya machar Rabbi sham. So he said that he went on his own. So im das Rabbi laser, if the das of the masters to return. Okay. So again, it's all totally, because it was from Chutz La'aretz to Chutz La'aretz, it's all going to be totally whether or not the master is planning on returning. Amrav Anan, Shamid Minei, the Mar Shmuel Tarti, heard 2 things from him. Chad Hoch, one was this, the Idach, and the other one is the following. A person sells his field during the Yovel time, Yovel Atzma. So Rav Omer Machor Rav Yoitza. The din is it was a good sale, then it goes back to the seller. Ushmul Omer Ein Machor Kalikar. It's not a sale at all because it was Yovel already. So that's the dispute. Bechada Hadri Zvine. So the money goes back to the purchaser. Ubechada Lo Hadri Zvine. In another case, the money does not go back to the purchaser. Lo yadana haiminayu. I don't know which case. So this whole notion of it's not a good sale by Yovel. So the question is that the case where the money goes back to the original, to the purchaser? So Amar Rav Yosef Nechsianan. Let's look into it. Meditani Brisa. If a person sells his Eved to an Akum, which is a Kanas Yatzal Cheres, Usarket Shechor Marabo Sheni, and you need a document, Shema Mina, Kan Yirabu Sheni, that we say actually the fact that the second guy has to write a star must be that he actually is koina and v'lo hadri zvine, and also the money will not go back to the purchaser. Shmuel hasam ein mechura, over there when we're talking about a field that was a sale, umois chayzrin, and the money does in fact go back. As we continue mem hayam and aleph, Rav Anan Braisel Shmieli. However, this Braisa, Rabbanan, he didn't actually hear this brisa to be able to answer this question. V'imad Shmuel, based on Shmuel, we said that it's not a sale, the money goes back. Maybe it's not a sale, and the money is actually considered to be a gift, says Rashi. If you want to tell me, according to Shmuel, he says it's not a sale at all. So if the din is that it's not a good sale, so it makes sense. According to him, of course, the money should go back. So he says that's not necessarily a raya, because maybe he holds that it's not a good sale, but maybe the money is just considered to be a matana. Maybe you have a makdish as a chaysai, just like a person who marries his sister, which obviously doesn't work. Dietmar Hamakadish is a chayso, which everyone knows it doesn't fly. So Rabbi Ramos chayso and Shmuel Ramos matana. So the reason why it's a gift is because everyone knows that you can't marry your sister. So it must be the fact that you did it was you gave it to her as a gift. So to over here, when it comes to Yovel, the fact that it's not a mechira doesn't mean necessarily that the money goes back. It's possible that the money was a matana. Amalei Abaye Rav Yosef, my chazas the kansin and loikeach. So why is it that we're going to kanas the buyer, and therefore the buyer, it's considered to be he bought this field, right? And we say it's not a good field, so he gave this guy the money, and now it's gone. Niknasil moicher. Why don't we kanas the seller, and maybe you should get the money back? So Amalei lav achbar ganav el chayr ganav. It's not the mouse that's the thief, but it's the hole that's the thief. In other words, the only way it's shaykh for a mouse to steal something is dafka if there's a place for it to go. What are you talking about? If there's no mouse, there could be holes all over your house. There's no potential that this mouse is going to take anything. So Mustaber Heichadi Isura Hasam Kansinan. We say that wherever the kanas is, wherever the isser is, that's where we kanas. And therefore Rashi says, Vihini ha'eved biyad l'kech. Since the eved is in the hands of the buyer, so therefore we say that that is the person we're going to kanas. Ad kan.